And we are back on Sportsman Radio. I'm your host, Chris Shanfeld, and I am now joined by Carmen DeFalco from the Carmen and Yurko Show on ESPN 1000 in Chicago. Carmen, it's great to have you on the show tonight, man. How's it going?
Everything's great, Chris. Always a pleasure.
Hey, it's always my pleasure too, Carmen, and let's get right to it. Obviously, the hot topic right now in Chicago and around the country really is that Brian Urlacher will not be returning to the Chicago Bears this upcoming season. And I got to admit, Carmen, I was pretty surprised by the news that actually came out on Wednesday. I thought that the Bears were going to agree to a contract with Urlacher. I thought that since it took so long, we haven't heard anything really. They were negotiating for a while now. And I really did think that Brian Urlacher was going to be back with the Bears. It sounds like that the Bears offered 54 a one-year contract worth $2 million, and Urlacher says that deal was like a slap in the face. Carmen, what was your reaction like when that news came out? I believe you were on the air at the time.
We were, yeah. We got the news. I can't say that I was expecting it to happen right when it did, but when you step back and kind of analyze it and just think about the way the offseason has kind of gone, and really the fact, Chris, that he went out in free agency and couldn't get a single offer from another team, I think that at that point we should have probably realized that it wasn't going to end, I guess, for the Bears and Urlacher. But look, change is inevitable, and in this league, with a hard salary cap and with the fact that the cap barely went up, Phil Emery made, he didn't even really try to hide the fact that they were going to have a tough time with some of their own unrestricted free agents. And, I think they looked at the situation as a perfect time for them to just get a clean break from Brian Urlacher. And as great as he's been, and he'll end up in the Hall of Fame someday, and he carried on a tremendous legacy at a position that means a lot to the organization and the city. And the linebacker position has sort of been defined by the Bears over the years. And he was a fantastic player, but he's not the same player. You're at the most only going to get another year or two out of him anyway. And when a new regime comes in, they're going to start to change things. And now that Phil Emery's a year on the job, and now that he has a new head coach with a totally different philosophy as they're going offense for the first time in a long time, you can see that the focus is starting to shift. And I think, again, that they just viewed it as a perfect time to get away clean now, because they didn't have to cut him. It's not as if he was Lance Briggs or Peter Tillman or Julius Peppers that was still on the contract. And I think that would have been much harder for them to do. From a PR standpoint, it would have been there would have been more blowback probably from the fans if they had cut him. But with Brian being a free agent, I think they looked at it as an absolute perfect time to signal that things are changing up at Hallis Hall, and I'm sure they do deep down appreciate all that he meant to the franchise. But it's what have you done for me lately? And unfortunately, 34 going on 35. While it doesn't seem that old, it's ancient for a professional football player, especially a middle linebacker.
Yeah, and he was entering his 14th season. He's obviously out of his prime. Honestly, I do think that the Bears could have handled the situation a different way, better maybe. I think, I know he's entering his 14th season. You said that it did seem like the perfect time, I guess, with him being a free agent, so they didn't need to cut him. But I think if they were to sign him to that one-year deal, I think Brian Urlacher would have he would have taken it better. I almost think he feels disrespected by the Bears and the organization.
Well, and he might, Chris, and I don't know that I disagree with you on what you just said about maybe they could have handled it differently. I sort of agree in a way, and I think that the way they could have done it is not even pretend that they wanted him back. Because let's face it, when they offer what they offered, they pretty much knew that there was no way he was going to accept it. And I think by doing that, the signal was pretty clear that they figured out a way to go ahead and make it look like they wanted him back and put the ball in his court. And then they could say, well, look, we offered him a contract, but he didn't realize. They knew what they were doing. And I sort of agree with you. They could have said, thank you for everything you've done. We're going to go in a different direction. They could have done that in whatever the first day of the new year was, was that March 12th, whatever it was, the new business year for the NFL a couple of weeks ago. They very easily could have done that, and they chose not to. And again, I think some of that maybe is just PR and posturing a little bit. They didn't want to make it look like they were completely turning their back on a franchise player, but it's business in the NFL, and people were probably bracing themselves for it anyway. It's not the first time that we've talked about the fact that there's a possibility that the guy's not going to be back because of his age and some of the injuries and just all the new faces up at Hallis Hall from a management and coaching standpoint. So, I sort of agree they probably could have just come come out and been honest and said right then and there, we're going to move in a different direction. And I think that was their plan all along, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think the Chicago Bears, I know I would have been surprised if Brian Urlacher were to agree to that 1 year, $2 million contract.
Yeah.
And
it would have been shocking. It would have been, I mean, you're not, and like Yurko always says, who I do a show with, who played 10 years in the league, you don't take a pay cut and go somewhere else and play, but you're not doing it for the team that you're currently on. And that is probably true for a lot of us in any walk of life. I don't know if your employer someday comes to you and says, I'm going to cut your salary by 75% if you're going to be too weak to take that deal. So, the old saying always goes in pro sports, especially in the NFL, you'll take a big pay cut if you want to keep playing, but you'll do it somewhere else. You're not going to do it for the team you're playing for.
Yeah, and a little bit off topic, I know you mentioned Yurko, your co-host, and Carmen, I keep on meaning to tell you this, and I finally have remembered. I don't know if you, I'm pretty sure Yurko did play with Larry McCarron. He actually came from the same high school as I'm in right now.
Nice. They were, Larry's a little bit older, but Yurko knows him very well because Larry's kind of a legend up there in Green Bay, just like Yurko. And Yurko used to go on his TV show a lot. What Larry was doing, I don't know if he still does that show or not, but he did kind of like a weekly Packer show, and he'd have rotating guests, and Yurko would go on his show quite often. And we've had Larry on a lot over the years. And he's a local guy who had a nice career up there, but they never played together, but they're part of the Green Bay family, and they know each other quite well.
All right, and now let's get back on topic. And Carmen, I don't know how I feel about this, but is there any chance that the Chicago Bears take Manti Te'o in the NFL draft?
Yes, I think there is a chance. And I don't know how I feel about it either. It's funny. I mean, I've never thought that he was a tremendous player. Now, he had a tremendous year. There's no doubt about that. And we don't have time to get into all the other nonsense that kind of happened in this offseason with Manti Te'o leading up to the combine and everything. But just let's talk about him as a football player. I've never thought that he sort of lived up to the hype, but he did have a tremendous year last year for Notre Dame. There's no denying that. I wonder if he's a three-down linebacker in the NFL. I will tell you that the more trained a guy like Yurko, a few other guys that we've talked to who watched the combine a little bit, and forget about the 40 time. I mean, if he would have run a 5, I think then maybe it'd be more of a concern. But he ran a time that is still suitable for a middle linebacker and a guy that can move a little. Terrell Suggs didn't run fast enough for a lot of teams when he was coming out, and I think every team in the league would love to have Terrell Suggs. So it's not just about 40 time, but the guys who watched him that have a more trained eye than I do for sure still think that he is really smooth and quick in and out of his breaks. And I think a lot of people do believe that he's got the ability to play and play at a high level. And I'm not going to tell you that anybody saying he could be a Hall of Fame player or anything like that, or he'll be as good as Brian Urlacher someday. But I think it's a strong possibility, and I think there are a lot of people out there that do believe he'll be a fine player in the NFL. If the Bears do end up doing that, I wouldn't be shocked if they waited. They moved out of the spot they're in right now on a 20, because they'll be able to wait and get him. So if they find a trade partner, someone that wants to move up, I think the Bears are going to be more than willing to move that pick so that they can stockpile some picks and move down in the draft and then get Manti Te'o. Phil Emery would love to get some picks here because they only have 5 as of right now in next month's draft, and he wants a lot more than that, especially with all that they need to address. They still need another offensive lineman, at least one. In the center, you probably need a guard, maybe even another tackle, but certainly a center and a guard, and now you have to address the linebacker position. So I'm sure he's eager to start stockpiling some picks, and he wouldn't hesitate to move out of that spot at number 20.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. There really isn't any big-name players in this draft except for these offensive linemen, really.
Yeah, there are a lot of them, and it's been an area of need, and I think they feel like they did what they had to do by addressing it in free agency, and I hope that works. And I think it can. I know that Jermon Bushrod doesn't necessarily grade out exponentially better than Jamarcus Webb. Certainly didn't last year. He's been a Pro Bowl caliber player. I think the whole line is improved by Jamarcus Webb moving back to the right side. I think that's a better spot for him. I think he's a better player than Gabe Creamy, and the Bears offensive line will be better with Jamarcus Webb on the right side. And I think Bushrod, despite what some of the staff may say, I still think he's an upgrade. So I think that will help that offensive line and help them in protection.
Now, you mentioned Jamarcus Webb. Carmen, it almost sounds like you're a member of J-Webb Nation.
Well, I don't know if I'm a member of his nation. I do follow him on Twitter, though. He's a funny follow. I don't think he is... I don't think that he... I don't know how to the right way to say it, because I think physically he's got all the tools to play. And I'm talking about the left tackle. I mean, he physically has it. He does. He's got the feet, he's got the body, he's got the athleticism. There's something that's just not clicking, though. Something doesn't fire, as they say. Because when the game rolls around, he gets beat far too often. He gets lazy in his technique. When he doesn't get that punch, he gets just bulldozed by defensive ends, linebackers, whatever it's going to be. He's got moments where it just seems like he doesn't play with a lot of passion, a lot of intuitiveness. I mean, there seems to be something missing. Because his athleticism is there, and you see it all the time. But he just is not consistent. And if you're not consistent and you're going to have those lapses, in this day and age, I think you're going to get eaten alive as a left tackle. And that means your quarterback's going to get eaten alive, and your passing game is not going to function the way it should. And you're not going to win this league, because it's not about defense anymore. It's about offense. And if you can't protect the quarterback, and if your left tackle's not strong and dependable, and you're constantly having to help, I just think it limits what coordinators and play callers can do in this day and age. And it's detrimental, and so I think he can play, and I think he'll be better on the right side, but he doesn't appear to me to be a franchise left tackle.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And Carmen, you kind of mentioned about the moves that the Bears made in free agency. They signed Martellus Bennett and Jermon Bushrod on the first day of free agency. Just today they made a deal with tight end, I believe his name is Steve Maneri from Kansas City. And, of course, they got rid of Kellen Davis and Matt Spaeth. So, overall, what are your thoughts on the Bears' moves during this offseason?
Well, I think they've done a pretty good job, considering they didn't have a lot of money to spend. Like I said, I think they upgraded just by way of finding someone that'll come in here and play left tackle and move Jamarcus Webb over. How much better is he going to be? I think he's an upgrade. Jermon Bushrod, that's what I'm talking about. Will he go to a Pro Bowl again? I don't know. He's been to a couple. The second one was maybe a little bit off of the year before in reputation. But I don't think he's one of the 5 best left tackles in the league. I know they're paying him handsomely, but you always overpay in free agency, so you just have to accept that and take a look and see if the Bears upgraded. And I think they did. Keith Creamy just doesn't look like he can play tackle in this league. Right away, and I'll never even try him on the left side, but it doesn't look like he's a tackle. Maybe he stays here or he catches on somewhere. If they cut him in training camp as a guard, but he doesn't appear to be able to play tackle, not after what we've seen. Even though that first year he got hurt in just the second game, and maybe there were some residual effects to his game last year from that injury, but he didn't have a good year, and I don't think they felt comfortable going into another season with Gabe Creamy as the right tackle. So by adding Bushrod, you get a guy who play on the left side, and you move Webb over to where he first started in this league on the right side, and hopefully that makes the whole line better. So all in all, I think with the limited amount of money they had to spend, because they did a decent job. I like that they were active on day one, too, addressing a couple of their needs.
Yeah, you mentioned Gabe Carimi, Jerry Angelo's last first-round draft pick. Go figure, right?
Another miss, and I like Jerry personally. I like Jerry Angelo a lot, and I think Jerry did do some good things over the years, and all GMs miss, but he just missed far too often, especially with those high picks, and the Bears are still paying the price, and that's ultimately what gets a guy fired in this league. They're still paying the price for Chris Williams, who's can't play. I mean, they tried. He couldn't play tackle, couldn't play guard. You pay the price for Gabe Creamy. When you miss on those first-round picks, especially tackle, the left tackle like Chris Williams is supposed to be, your organization pays for it big time down the line, and that's what's happening now.
Yeah, it is. You guys are listening to Sportsman Radio. I'm your host, Chris Shanafelt, talking with Carmen DeFalco from ESPN 1000 in Chicago. All right, Carmen, let's switch gears really quick and talk about the Chicago Bulls, who have really been struggling lately. Of course, they've been suffering many injuries and currently hold the 6th spot in the Eastern Conference with a record of 36-30, and are actually currently playing the Portland Trailblazers right now as we speak, and that game does not look pretty at all. Carmen, I believe it was on Monday, and the Bulls went into overtime against the Denver Nuggets with less than a minute left. actually less than 5 seconds left, and Bellinelli takes a shot, and it looks like it was going to be short, so Joakim Noah tips it in, and it seems like the Bulls were going to win that game until Denver takes a timeout. The refs look at the play, and they call goaltending. What was that? What was that, Carm?
Well, certainly the call was the right call. It's just how they arrived at it that was so weird. There's no doubt that that was a goaltend. I mean, that ball clearly was on its way down and was close enough to possibly graze the rim, and that's all it has to do. I mean, that's the definition. That's the textbook definition of the rule. I mean, a player obviously cannot make contact with the ball on the way down when it has an opportunity to touch the rim. So it was clearly a goaltend. What I don't understand is and I don't think we ever really got definitive clarification. What was the call on the floor? Because if no goaltend was called, then they should not have been allowed to look at that. But it sounds like from talking to people over there and talking to people at the scores table, what happened was one official initially had ruled field goal. The scorer saw it, and the official scorer put the 2 points on the board. But the baseline official came over at the timeout and said, "I'm not so sure about that. I think that was a goaltend." And that's how they arrived at the decision and to look at the videotape. I don't know. The whole thing was weird, Chris. It was. I think that's what Tom Thibodeau was so hot about. How they never reviewed the Kupis one because they couldn't, because they didn't call goaltend. So they did that right. They couldn't go back and look at the video. But then somehow they were looking at the video of the Joe Kim tip. But, the call was right. It's just I think a lot of people had issue with how they arrived at actually reviewing that play.
Yeah, and we've seen Tom Thibodeau angry a bunch, but I've never seen him go off as hard as he did that night.
No, I don't know that I've seen him quite that hot. And I get it. The passion just kind of comes out. They felt like they were wrong moments earlier on the Kupis play, like I mentioned. That looked like it was a goaltend, too, but they allowed that to stand. So I don't blame him for being mad, and I think it was good that Bull security, head of security, Eric Buck, was standing right between, sort of positioned himself between Thibodeau and the refs so that it didn't escalate to the point where Tom Thibodeau would do something he would regret, because I think he wanted a piece of Kenny Mauer for sure.
Yeah, it looked like that, man. I mean, I gotta say, Thibodeau is probably one of the scariest people I know, or see.
But he's mad.
Yeah. And, Carmen, we are about 67 games into the 82-game NBA season, and Derrick Rose still has not returned from the torn ACL that he suffered in the first game of the first round of the playoffs last season against Philadelphia. Do you think Derrick will return at all, whether it's in the regular season or in the playoffs?
It doesn't sound like it from the way he talks, so I don't know what to think anymore. I can't remember in the modern day here with the great medicine that they have and how quickly athletes come back from that type of injury. I can't ever remember one taking this long. I don't know. It's disappointing. I know that's not a popular term around here because there's some blind loyalty for Derrick because he's a great player and he's one of our own. He's a Chicago kid, but I don't understand it. I really don't. I don't understand the 320-day, whatever it is now. I think it's about 320-day recovery. That doesn't happen. It doesn't take 320 days for pro athletes to come back from ACL surgeries. He's been cleared for weeks and weeks to play medically. So I think it's a little bit unfortunate. I'm not sure what he's waiting for, but the way he talks doesn't sound like he's in any rush to get back this year.
Yeah, it's pretty disappointing to say the least, but Nate Robinson and Kirk Hinrich aren't doing too bad of a job, at least when Hinrich is healthy. Carmen, I really appreciate your time tonight, man. It's always a great pleasure to talk to you. Before I let you go, is there anything you'd like to plug on the air for myself and our listeners?
Well, we got the time change coming up starting April 1, so tune into that. We'll be flipping to 10 to 2 with Lotto and Sylvie, and looking forward to opening day and the rest of March Madness, I guess. So we'll keep doing our thing, having fun.
Hey, keep doing it, Carmen. I really appreciate it.
All right, Chris. Thanks, man. Anytime.
All right, take care.